They always drive off the heli in a natty little Land Rover. I'm a Lieutenant Colonel and I don't have a natty little Land Rover.
Are you saying you want a Land Rover, sir?
What's the first rule? Get a Land Rover. See?
Welcome to what's been known now as the Marmite Vlogs. Unfortunately, there is no Marmite today. I'm in a hotel room in Bromsgrove on a training course for work. So no Marmite today, unfortunately. But it's going to be a quick one. This one, not the usual sort of 12-15 minute rants that rambling that I normally do. I'm well known for rambling and going off on odd tangents and everything, so I do apologise for that. So this one, right, where do we get to? We've spoken about my first encounter with a Land Rover, my first encounter with a Range Rover. We've spoken about my teacher who had the red 109 and her fantastic barge Daybreak, Humber Keel Daybreak. So if we scoot along a few years now, I'm about 11 maybe, 12, so around that sort of age. Whilst not specifically about a Land Rover or a group of Land Rovers, it's about four-wheel drive. My dad makes model boats. He's also dabbled in model aircraft and model cars and model railway. He loves model railways, but his primary focus has been on model boats. Military craft, he built several destroyers and a few frigates. A fantastic tug, a World War I tug called Envoy. Looked gorgeous, big beefy tug, it was superb. And I begged that I could have a go. And he says, alright, but just be careful. And ran around, and then as I was bringing it in, I accidentally crashed into the side of the jetty, and Dad wasn't best pleased. But when he wrote to the Greenwich Maritime Museum and got a copy of the original plans for Envoy, he realised that the plans he had made it from, because it was all scratch built. My dad just builds everything from scratch. It wasn't a kit. Everything he made was from scratch, from plasticard and balsa and but yeah, what he had built from the plans that he was originally given were wrong. The original plans from Greenwich Maritime Museum, the actual plans for Envoy, showed a completely different superstructure and a completely different deck layout. So I kind of did him a favour by ripping all the deck and the superstructure off. But he makes some model boats. Now he's well into his Thames barges. He builds absolutely stunning models of Thames barges. But he was a member of a model club, and various members in this model club had four-wheel drive vehicles, and there was one or a couple that particularly stick out. And there was a guy called Mac. I don't know what his full name was or what Mac was short for. He was only known, or I only knew him as Mac. And he had an original American Willys Jeep with the canvas tilt on the back and everything else, and the jerry cans and the big white star on the front and the numbers down the side and everything. And you know, I looked at it, and it was a nice car. As I say, I was 11 or 12, and it was a very nice, well preserved car. We were looking at it, and he says, "Oh, you know, do you fancy going for a drive?" Because where the boating lake is, it was private land. It was owned by the model club. Still is owned by the model club. But you go around the back, and there's dirt tracks around the back, and then come back around the front. And he says, "You know, do you fancy going out for a drive with it?" You know, brilliant, yeah, superb, love to. So I jumped in, and we bounced around and everything as you know, leaf-sprung American Willys Jeeps do. But it just wasn't a Land Rover. I looked at it and I thought, you know, this, you know, it's a very nice car. It looks the part because, you know, ex-military, you know, it's that drab olive green. You know, it's got all the military markings on it, and you know the drab canvas tilt and everything. No doors, and this big steering wheel thing. But it just wasn't a Land Rover. I know that the original Land Rover was based on the Willys Jeep, And I knew this when Mac gave us the opportunity to have a bit of a drive around in it. It just wasn't the same. It didn't have, to me, it didn't have that little cheeky character that Land Rovers have. There's one other four-wheel drive vehicle that you know, when I was younger, had another influence on me. I'd turn around and said, no, I understand the Land Rover is based on the Jeep and it's great, but it's not a Land Rover, is it? And another one, I can't remember his full. I think it was Richard Webb. He had a faded red Mitsubishi. Now I don't know if it was a Pajero or a Shogun. I know they're both the same, but you know, different styling cues. I think it was a Shogun. I think it was the 3-litre turbo diesel Shogun. I don't think it was a Pajero. $3, the $3 short one. You know, same thing. He was a member of the cut and down at the lake, and he says, "Oh, let's go for a drive around. You know, I know you're into your four-wheel drive car. Let's go for a drive around." I looked at it and had went in it, and it was all right, but it just, again, it just wasn't a Land Rover. It didn't have the soul. It didn't have that. It didn't have the passion. It was too boring. No, it sounded good. It pulled like a train. You know, 3-litre turbo diesel. Fair enough. It was an early 3-litre turbo diesel, because we are talking late 80s by this point. Early 90s, must have been about 89. 1990, something like that, and this car was probably about 3 or 4 years old. So it wasn't, you know, a modern diesel. It was probably a mechanically injected diesel with a turbo and everything. So it wasn't full of power, but you know, it had a turbo and it had a bit of go in it. It just wasn't a Land Rover. To me, I sat and I thought, what's the point in it? It's not a Land Rover. It doesn't have the soul. It doesn't fizz and bubble inside me and go, wow. It was just a soulless Japanese box, and the Willys Jeep was just a a tool to drive around in. It wasn't anything special. And my head teacher of the middle school, Mrs. Ash, she had a Nissan Patrol, an old Nissan Patrol. They just weren't the same, you know. The Willys Jeep, the Mitsubishi Shogun, and the Nissan Patrol. They just weren't the same. It wasn't such a big thing. They were fairly rare. Nowadays, every manufacturer makes a four-wheel drive vehicle or a sports utility vehicle or whatever you want to call them. Then they were reasonably rare. I mean, the only other one that probably popped my imagination really was somebody had a Chevrolet Blazer, an American four-wheel drive thing, and that thing was massive. It was wide and it was very tall and it was huge, and I liked it because it was big. It looked beefy, but it still didn't sort of have that spark that a Land Rover does. Again, reaffirmed the fact that, you know, there is nothing out there that will rival there's nothing out there that will rival the Green Oval. And the Green Oval was to me, you know, back you know, when I was that age, that was still the king of off-road vehicles. Kind of cemented it, and it reaffirmed and it sealed in my mind that Land Rover is the way to go.